Jesse, I just took my first cold shower or ice bath or whatever, and I have this weird thing. Can you help me out? Uh, Suddenly, parts of my hand and fingers were turning white, and they just wouldn't get warm. Maybe my feet, maybe parts of my ears were just turning white. Maybe my nose, maybe even my nipples. What's going on? Can you help me? Well, my friend, you may have Raynaud's syndrome. Let's talk about it today. Welcome to the Midwest. My name is Jesse, and today we're talking about Raynaud's syndrome, also known as Raynaud's phenomena. And this is something that I see a lot of because, of course, I train people in the cold, doing just cold therapy. I also train Wim Hof method. I've trained hundreds of people in Wim Hof method. And hey, pretty much most of what I do involves getting into some kind of a cold temperature. And I get to be the person to answer this question for a lot of people. They'll take an ice bath with me, or they'll email me. I've actually recently gotten a lot of emails about this, so that's why I wanted to cover this. And it's kind of a weird, scary thing. It's this Raynaud's syndrome, and basically what Raynaud's syndrome is it's a phenomenon that happens where there is twitching in an artery that would normally give you blood to a certain area of your body, but because of this twitching, it causes the artery to close up and to contract, and you don't get any blood there. And that's why your fingers or your toes or your parts of your feet, parts of your ears, whatever, that's why they will turn white. They don't get any blood, and so it's completely shunted off. And this is something that early on in my ice bathing, as a ice bathing coach, as a teacher, as a guide, as an instructor, it was really something that I don't really suffer from this myself. I have never had this happen to me, but I was advised by a lot of people not to train people who had Raynaud's syndrome, just because there's a extra danger possibly, especially in for getting frostbite, because you're not getting blood to that part of your body, and it's really it may take a long time for that part of your body to get more blood back into that area. And so if you're out in the wilderness, in the snow, in the cold for long periods of time, you have a greater chance of getting frostbite in that area. So I was really hesitant to train people. Actually, I have turned people down. I don't anymore, but I have turned people down in my early days of training who had Raynaud's syndrome, just because I didn't want to take any chances. I didn't want to take any chance of hurting anybody. Raynaud's syndrome, just to give you a little background on it, there's two kinds of Raynaud's syndrome. There's primary Raynaud's syndrome, and that's where it just kind of happens. There's no real cause, or it's not like you catch this thing from another person. It just kind of happens. And it's not uncommon that a person will have Raynaud's syndrome. The other kind of Raynaud's syndrome is secondary Raynaud's syndrome, and this is, hence the name, it's a secondary, it's kind of a symptom of an underlying cause. And typically, if you get Raynaud's syndrome early on in life, maybe between the ages of like 10 and even 30, it's likely, and I'm not a doctor here, right? But it's likely that you're getting primary Raynaud's syndrome and not secondary. But it's possible, especially as you get older, maybe in your 20s or 30s too, just think about this. It's possible that Raynaud's syndrome is being caused by an underlying problem. And so it may be a good reason to go get checked out. Just get 100% sure that there's nothing giving you problems. Sometimes it's lupus, sometimes it's other rheumatoid type of problems, sometimes it's inflammation. There are different causes, and again, I'm not going to go through all the possibilities, and you really should talk to your doctor if you believe that you have secondary Raynaud's syndrome. But if it's something that's always been happening kind of since you were a kid, it's likely that you have primary Raynaud's syndrome, and in that case, it's not dangerous. for you to get into the cold, but it it is and it isn't. It's not dangerous to do, like, for instance, I allow people to come to my workshops and things to ice bathe even if they have Raynaud syndrome. Now, if you have a really severe case, some people will call it being allergic to the cold. You'll know it. You'll know it if you're incredibly sensitive to the cold, and you just your doctor will have told you at some point in your life, hey, stay away. And so there's degrees. Now, if it's just like your finger or your ears or your feet, some people, and I'm not recommending this, but I have known people who have decided, okay, I'm not going to take the standard advice. So the standard advice, if you have Raynaud's syndrome or phenomenon, is to avoid the cold. Okay, the cold causes this. Typically, it can also be caused by stress. It can also be caused by like smoking. If you smoke, hey, quit smoking anyway, please, for your own sake. But it can also be caused by maybe you've had too much caffeine that day, something like that. But the primary cause is the cold, and it's a cold sensitivity. So the traditional advice is to avoid the cold, avoid the thing that makes the problem happen. And so that's what most people do. Now, I have talked to people, and I know people personally who have, they've gone the other way with it. They've said, well, I'm going to slowly acclimate myself, and I'm going to train the parts of my body that suffer from Raynaud syndrome, and I will basically, through hormesis, or through just basically causing stress to that area, and with using the cold, I'm going to cause a change. I'm going to cause my body to adapt. And I've talked to some people who have had success with that. There's no guarantees that would happen, but I just want to relay that to you. If you have Raynaud's syndrome, it is something that I would be careful, especially whenever you're going to maybe do outdoor exposures. But typically, the average person with primary Raynaud syndrome, you can take cold showers, you can do ice bathing. It's just that you have this extra thing you do need to be mindful of. And if you have it, from what I've been told, whenever it happens to you, it can be sort of painful. So just be aware of that there can be a pins and needles type of effect, and whenever the blood goes back to that area, it can be kind of painful too. So just something to be aware of. But if you didn't know what it was, it's most likely Raynaud syndrome. Now, you have to go to a doctor to get really, so hey, yeah, this is the diagnosis, Raynaud syndrome. But it's likely that you may have it if you are experiencing the whiteness, in certain parts of your hand. I've seen it in people's ears, their nose. It kind of looks funny. It's like, whoa, that's kind of, sometimes it looks like you carved little parts out of your hand with white. And so, but I've known lots of people who have been just fine, and even though they had Raynaud syndrome, who continued to train in the cold. My best suggestion for you is, if you believe that this is an issue that you have, obviously, just be careful. Just know, okay, this is something that I should be mindful of. And then what you choose to do after that is up to you. Of course, as far as this channel goes, I would highly recommend, obviously being careful. Always be careful rather than crazy. And if you need to, and definitely go to the doctor, make sure that's actually what it is. And because sometimes there's an underlying cause there that you need to fix, and if you fix that underlying cause, the Raynaud's goes away as well. So those are the things that I really think you should know about Raynaud's syndrome, or Raynaud's phenomenon. It's something that probably won't give you any major problems. Lots of people have it, and really, you may even have it even if you don't get the whiteness on your hands, feet, and nose and ears. If when you come from the cold, you're cold way longer. I mean, I'm talking like 10, 15 minutes longer than the average person feels cold. It's possible that you have it too, and you just don't get the outward symptoms as well. So anyway, so that is what that is. Please feel free to to ask further questions on these things, but it's not the end of the world when it comes to cold training. It's not like you can't take cold showers. It's not like you can't gradually adapt into ice bathing as well. You just have this extra thing to think about. Guys, I hope that helps. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and don't forget to go out there and be nice to people. Oh yeah. Okay. Pretty sweet snow angel.